All right, we're in chapter 30. The prohibition, tail bearing, that's Lashon Hara, slander, that's Moitzi Shemra, that's Nakama, and bearing a grudge, that's Natira. So these biblical commandments, all of which are found in the beginning of Kedushin, if I recall correctly. The pasuk says, Leviticus 19, that's Kedushin. The pasuk says, do not tail bearer among your people. What constitutes tail bearing? It is counted and going from one to the other, saying, so and so said this, such and such about so and so. Even if the tale he tells is true, anyone, it is still a violation of a negative commandment, and it is a grave sin which of Jewish people, right? So we're not talking here about slander. We're not talking here about Lashon Hara. We're not saying anything bad about anyone. You're just being, excuse the yenta. You're just going around talking to people about other people. We actually did a class which touched upon this. It was actually first the Women to Women program, in which we had Shro present the legal aspects of privacy and stuff like that. Presented also halachic elements to it. And I believe correctly there was a follow-up Sunday morning class. So so we discussed these laws in depth over there. We certainly touched upon it. It is a great, because of this, the law against tailbearing is verse, do not stand by the blood of your neighbor. Now, in other words, what he's saying is that the blood of your neighbor is actually an independent mitzvah, but it's juxtaposed to the mitzvah of tailbearing, because it's all tailbearing is considered to be so bad that it causes the death of the Jewish people. Now, in the case of Doeg the Edomite, who told Shaul that Achimelech gave David food and he sword. Even though the thing he told was true and not reflect dishonor on Achimelech, for he had not done anything wrong. And even if Shaul himself had asked Achimelech, told him what he had done, for he had no intention to sin against Shaul. Despite this tailbearing of Doeg, any kohen to be killed. And if we look here in the footnote, number 5, it gives us chapter 22 of Shmuel Aleph relates that David relentlessly pursued by Shloiv, the city where the sanctuary was situated, to obtain bread for his men. And God gave him bread, and also the sword of Goliath that was kept there. Doeg the Edomite reported this, the king ordered the slaying of the Kohanim in the city of Noiv. Okay. Right. Okay, that's stage 1. Now there's a stage 2, which is a much graver related, similar in nature. There's a much graver sin than tailbearing, which is classified under this prohibition, is Lashon Hara, slander, which is speaking of someone's shame is true. But now, of course, the laws of Lashon Hara, of when exactly it is not okay to say something bad about somebody. There's all sorts of people ask you about information about somebody in connection to the shidduch, leaving a review or some other on any website about your experience with a certain retailer or vendor. All of these are very relevant halachic shilas that come up all the time. Plug for the library. We have a number of English books in the library that halachas. I'm happy to show them to you next time when I see you in Beis Menachem.
Rabbi,
so this is
does this opinion carry on into the more modern age? Like, for example, if I read Chafetz Chaim, would it consider gossip as not significant enough to be Lashon Hara? So
I'm sorry.
I was under the impression that that was Lashon Hara. Maybe I'm being too strict,
The first number 1.
Yes.
No, they're connected. Chaim has a whole sefer elaborating this. They're connected,
Right.
and they're both governed by the same verse in the Torah that says, don't be a talebearer. But terminology, there's two different words for them. The first is talebearer, in Hebrew it's called rechilu, and the second is lashon hara. The difference is that lashon hara is when your intention say something bad about that person.
I see.
Right?
It seems like nowadays we kind of use lashon hara as like a catch-all term for that includes the lesser offenses. So I was kind of confused.
Yes, that could be true. A person who's right. So far we've mentioned two things. Number one is rechilus, which is just gossip, bad stuff, just talking about other people. Is slander, which is lashon hara. And the third level is mitzvah shamra. Mitzvah shamra is when a person who spreads lies about another person is guilty of besmirching someone's name. Mitzvah shamra. Is a person who says so and so has done such and such for his parents, such and such. I think I heard about him, and he relates shameful things. Because we're going back now to lashon hara. So a slanderer, in other words, lashon hara, is not saying lies. He's saying true things. I heard this and this about somebody. That's true. But if it's if he relates shameful things, that's under the prohibition of lashon hara. And regarding such a person, the Torah, it's not the pasuk says, scripture says, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, I think. Yeah. Yachris Hashem kol sisi chalokis lashim beres kudelis. Hashem cut off all smooth talking lips that speaks haughty words. A person who accepts slanderous gossip is worse than the one who spreads it. The heavenly decree against our forefathers in the wilderness was sealed only because they committed of slander. Right? What was the sin of slander? The spies had said lashon hara about the nation. So it's not lashon hara in the literal sense of the word. The Meraglim who badly about it, right? It's not literally lashon hara that they spoke bad about a person, but it was the same character traits. Okay, to what lengths must avoid lashon hara? For instance, if a man asks you, where can I find fire? And he replies, I'll tell you where you can. In the house of so-and-so, where there's plenty of meat and fish, they're always cooking something, right? So he's answering the question where you can find food, but he's kind of saying it in sort of the cynical way, opportunity to poke fun about those people who are so indulging in their eating of meat. This is something which is very, very common. There are certain things which are considered translated as mild nuances of lashon hara. Literally, it means dust of lashon hara. For example, if someone says, "Let's not talk about so and so," I don't want to tell you what happened or what transpired, or words to that effect. So I'm not actually saying anything bad, but just by saying I don't want to talk about it, you're already indicating that there's some, and that is called avak lashon hara. Likewise, if you tell someone's virtues in the presence, this constitutes a milder nuance of slander, for this will prompt his enemies to say things about him. I actually had a case of yesterday. Somebody is visiting Chicago, and in fact, I did not end up meeting him, but I thought I was going to meet him today. And so last night when I was talking to him about it, I was sort of imagining in my head that when he comes, I would take a selfie of the two of us and post it on a certain web where both of us know a bunch of people in that WhatsApp group. And that's the thing nowadays. You take a selfie, you post in WhatsApp groups. And then, like, as I was, hey, if I post a picture of him on this group, it's going to instigate conversation. Hey, what's the guy doing in Chicago? He came to this and this event. Appropriate that he went to this event, and it was going to be a whole. It was exactly this case of lashon hara, and so I decided that I would not post. In the end, I didn't actually meet him, but this was just a thought that passed through my mind exactly. All right. Concerning this, the Torah says, "Don't be a talebearer." It doesn't say, "Don't be a Shlomo HaMelech says, he that praises his friend with a loud voice when running, it will be counted as a curse for him. For proclaiming his virtues, we'll call him. Also, right? So in other words, I keep on getting this notification that my internet is unstable. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yeah, there's
Sound
some
a little bit, not too
cracking.
bad.
Your voice crackles sometimes, but for the most part, I can hear you.
Yeah, just
Right.
recently.
I'm literally
Yeah, I
right
hear
next
some
to the
distortion at the end of some of your words.
I'm right next to the Wi-Fi thing, but okay. All right. Anyway, somebody metaphorically he praises him so loud. You know, what am I doing wrong? But actually, you're praising him so loud that, in other words, you're doing him such a big favor. This is an expression in Yiddish. I don't know why he hates me. I never did him any favors. Don't talk so loud in somebody's praise because you're gonna enemies to talk in his bad about. Also, a person's saying a jocular manner as a joke, as if we're not speaking of a milder form of slander. King Solomon referred to this when he said in his wisdom, a man who plays and shoots firebrands, arrows, and death. So is the man saying, "Look, I'm only joking." Say lashon hara and say, "I'm only joking." Equally guilty is a person who slanders with slyness by pretending to say as if he were unaware that what he is saying is slander when he is taken to task. He's like, "What? I didn't know this. I don't know." Okay, so the more sort of what's the word? Be careful and be honest. Now, relates lashon hara, regardless whether in the presence or in absence of the other fellow, or if he tells cause damage to someone else, either to his person, in other words, to his reputation, or even only if he intended to annoy him or to frighten him, it's lashon hara. But if these things are already been told in the presence of three people, it may become known, and if one of the three persons tell one more to other people that is not lashon hara, but repeat it with the intention to spread the rumor and give it added publicity. Right? So basically, what this, again, if you look in the Chafetz Chaim, he has many conditions and the details he elaborates on this. Basically, what we're saying is that if this information is known, people know about this. So then, if I have reason to tell somebody about it, for me to say it. Now, provided that my reason to say it is not just because I'm enjoying this or I get a kick out of spreading gossip. If I have some reason to tell you that again, my intention is not to spread it further. I have a legitimate reason why I want to tell you, and not it's public known information, so then it's okay. Now, what procedure should a man follow to avoid falling into the trap of lashon hara? Scholar, he should engross himself in the study of Torah. If he is unlearned, he should practice humility. Okay, so studying Torah and being humble are good tools to make sure you stay in the straight and narrow. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said, the following four categories of people, the divine presence in the hereafter. Katleitzim, people who scorn him, people who engage in flattery, kat shakronim, the kat musapir lashon hara, and those who speak lashon hara. Scorners can be inferred from the pasuk, he withdraws hands from scorners. Rashi explains that the Holy One, blessed is he, pulls away his hand from scorners. Flatterers can be inferred from the verse, a flatterer cannot come before Hashem. May be inferred from the pasuk, he who tells lies will have no place before my eyes. Those who speak lies inferred from the pasuk, you are not a God who desires evil, will not abide with you. Rashi explains that the phrase refers to those who speak lashon hara because it is written in the Psalm, so there's no sincerity. The Gemara concludes Since you are a righteous God, no evil can abide in your dwelling. Our rabbis of blessed memory said, ridicule is forbidden except for the ridicule of idol worship, for it is written, and it happened at noon that Eliyahu, right? So one has to be very careful not to another person's another person's sincerity. You might think it's simplistic. Ridicule is something to be avoided. All right. Okay, so this is kind of a new section now. Siv Zayin is the laws of Nekama and Netira. This is a pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim. Do not take revenge and do not. Okay, whoever takes revenge on someone violates a negative commandment, for it is revenge. What constitutes vengeance? Reuven says to Shimon, lend me your spade. Shimon replies, no, I won't. Next day, Shimon has to borrow something, and he says to Reuven, lend me your spade. And Reuven says, no, I won't lend it to you. I mean yours when I ask you for it. This constitutes taking revenge, and he has violated a net. When Shimon comes to borrow something, you should give it to him wholeheartedly and not pay him back for what he did to him. Becoming for a person to show forbearance in all mundane matters, when the eyes of understanding people, they think about vanity and futility, and not worth taking revenge because of them. And thus has said, peace be upon him. If I have my friends with evil, I who released my unprovoked adversary for the prohibition against others. See chapter 6. Okay, so he's just referencing here in 6 we spoke about cursing other Jews. Okay, let's do 8 and then we'll summarize. If you really want to take revenge against your enemy, how do you do? So acquire more good qualities, walk in the path of the righteousness. And so doing inevitably take vengeance against your enemies, for he will be distressed over your good qualities, he will be grieved over your good reputation. But if you stoop to do vile deeds, the enemy will rejoice, and he is the one who takes revenge against. And see for Ches in 8, he's kind of recommending that we get the moral upper half, engaging in refining one's character, and that sort of treat that as your street revenge. Okay, just very quickly, again, this matter in the past, and again, I'm making myself a reminder. I'll try to see. I have recordings of other classes that we've done on these inyanim, and send out the links. But the point to remember is that what's the example of a case where he says you can't, you shouldn't take revenge? Yeah, we wrong. You asked him to borrow his spade, so then the next day he comes to ask you to borrow your spade. You say yes, right? Now, so the thing that he wronged you is that he didn't lend you his spade. Now, remember that may have been mean of him. It may have been uncaring. It may have been also. But it wasn't. He didn't violate you. He didn't cross any red lines by not lending you his spade. He does not owe it to me. Lend me his spade, right? So, when we talk about the laws of Kitzur, also bearing a grudge, we'll see in a moment. The strict law of it, obviously, that is to always be completely 100% forgiving and never to bear a grudge and never to do anything like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. We're going to learn it in Chitas in a couple of days to learn from the way Yosef treated his brothers. That not only did he not pay back bad, he paid back bad with good. But on the very sort of basic halachic level, the point over here is the guy spade. He doesn't owe you to lend you a spade. Don't get yourself all in a hot cake because you're a spade, right? So let's say the guy didn't invite me to his to include me in whatever it is, right? These are all things that could be hurtful. The guy you, and that's the mitzvah of Nekama. The mitzvah of not taking Nekama. If a person wronged you, you don't have an obligation to forgive him, and you may even take revenge until he has fixed it. So, for example, if the guy stole money from me, and then says, "Can I borrow your spade?" or "Can you invite me to your wedding?" or whatever it is. Again, halachically, it's perfectly permissible for me to say, "No, you stole my money. You ruined my life. You made me go to bankruptcy. I'm not being nice to you." Right now, that not do. You're still not allowed to do something that's forbidden. We're not going to allow you to now his money or go and beat him up or do other things that have other prohibitions involved. Under the context of bearing a grudge and taking revenge, if a person wronged you, if violated you, again, whether it's financially or a guy besmirched your name and he ruined your reputation, any of the things like that, strictly speaking, there is no prohibition against taking revenge for such a person. Is that clear? Let's move on to the final halach over here. Bearing a grudge against the fellow Jew violates a negative commandment, for it is said, "Don't bear" constitutes bearing a grudge. For example, if Reuven says to Shimon, "Lend me that." After a while, Shimon came to borrow something for Reuven, and Reuven says to it, "I will lend it to you, like you, I will repay you for what you did." He who does so violates the prohibition against bearing a grudge. Rather, he should be blotted out of his heart and think no more of it. This is of the proper frame of mind from which society can survive, and between people can be maintained. Again, this is a quote from Rambam. Now, here there's some room for this, and I'm not going to answer the question right now, but I'll present the question. When we say there's a forbidden to bear a grudge, and we give an example, the guy comes and asks for a spade, and he doesn't lend it to you, and then when he comes to borrow your spade, you lend it to him, and you don't say, "Oh, I'm not like you." So is the prohibition only in saying something? Is there a prohibition that I'm not allowed to say something to that person that expresses the fact that even though I'm not taking revenge, but I'm still remembering? Or are we going to go even a step further and say the mitzvah is to wipe it out of your heart? That even in your heart, in your mind, you shouldn't be thinking that. Yeah, the fact that he sent me my spade, I'm going to forget about it. I'm not even going to think it, which is obviously a much higher order. Usually people remember things, and if I was a little bit offended, a little bit insulted, so I can work on myself and not act on it and not say anything about it, but it's demanding of us that I shouldn't even bear such a grudge in my heart. So this is for further analysis and more discussion, and we'll leave it at that for today. That's it, unless there's more questions.
Rabbi, in regards to the Lashon Hara, say, I'm assuming Pikuach Nefesh counters this, of course. Like, for example, you have a friend you have a friend that's drinking too much, and they want to kill themselves. You have to tell someone to help them, something like that, right? But you don't want to reveal that they had an alcoholic problem or something, right? Like maybe only tell a rabbi about it. Like, what's the best?
100%. Well, and first of all, 100%. If you need to save somebody's life, or even not save the life, save somebody's well-being, then you can. Sometimes it's a good idea to speak to somebody else first. Personal experience I had somewhat recently. There was a person who had strong concerns about his alcohol habit. And so I called someone who I know actually doesn't live in Chicago, expert on addiction in general and specifically alcohol addiction. I said to him, I didn't mention the names, and even if I would have, it wouldn't have meant anything to him. This is the situation, this is the person's situation in life, this is, and what do you recommend I do? And then he gave me and I followed through on that. So if there's a concern that you want to help somebody and you think that it might be violating Lashon Hara, then you could always go and ask somebody experienced or a Rav without saying any names or factors, and then take it from there.
Yeah. And I assume there's a limit on like who you would speak to about it, maybe family or the rabbis, and like of course, right? So thank you, I appreciate it.
Exactly. Every situation has to be addressed.